Okay, we should now be live.
Okay. Hello everyone, and welcome to a short panel discussion and campaign launch. The campaign, Ban Chen, focuses on senior Chinese Communist Party figure Chen. You may be forgiven for not knowing this name, but you might well be aware of his deeds, from mass incarceration of Uyghurs to turning Tibet into a police state. Over the next hour, we're going to hear from several expert speakers who are going to tell us a little bit more about this man and what the effects of his rule have been on Uyghurs and Tibetans. I will conclude by talking a little bit about our campaign, and then we will take some of your questions, which you can write in the comments below. I will introduce the panel now, and with us we have Adrian Zenz. He is an independent researcher and an expert on China's policies in Tibet and the Uyghur region. We have Rahima Mahmut, the UK project manager for the World Uyghur Congress, and we're hoping to be joined shortly by Wangden Kyab, the research manager at Tibet Watch. I am John Jones. I'm the campaigns and advocacy manager at Free Tibet. And I thought we could get straight to the speakers, perhaps starting with Adrian. Could you maybe tell us who Chen is, how he came to power, and highlight a few of the policies that we should know him by?
Yes, well, thank you for having me. Chen is really the key architect of oppression in both Tibet and Xinjiang. Chen is from Henan. He served in the PLA army for 4 years at age 18. He rose through the political ranks in his home province of Henan, then became the governor of neighboring Hebei province. In 2011, he became the party secretary of the Tibet Autonomous Region. Almost immediately after starting his rule over there in August 2011, he initiated some very massive and drastic interventions, ramping up social control in this restive region. Just a couple of years before, in 2008, Lhasa, of course, had been rocked by the unrest. This was followed by years of self-immolations as a form of peaceful and quite silent protest against the Chinese regime. Chen, in November 2011, sent 100,000 government officials to villages and village-based work teams. This was a new initiative that would later be replicated in Xinjiang and became a key pillar of Chen's stability maintenance work. It was an addition and a complementary aspect to many technological innovations, such as high-tech surveillance systems. The work of these teams was very intrusive. They basically go from home to home, from door to door, seeking to obtain personal information from Tibetan villagers. They could be used against them, to report on them. Likewise, in late 2011, Chen started with the construction of so-called convenience police stations, neighborhood police stations that serve surveillance purposes. In urban areas, they are spaced 500 meters apart, so you have some of them everywhere. By 2012, Lhasa alone had over 160 of them. By 2016, the whole Tibet Autonomous Region, 700 approximately. These police stations are the backbone of something called grid management, by which you parcel out urban areas, especially in so-called grids, little areas comprising maybe a block or two or a couple of blocks. And every grid has a close-knit surveillance system where you keep close tabs on anything that's happening, on any coming and going. To staff these police stations and to set up an unprecedented police state, Chen advertised 4 times as many positions for police during his 5 years in Tibet as had been advertised in the preceding couple of years before that. Between 2007 and the summer of 2011, Tibet advertised about 2,800 police officer positions. Between 2011 and 16, it advertised over 12,000. Chen's method of sending tens of thousands of government officials to villages was adopted in Xinjiang in 2014. Between 2014 and 16, there were 3 waves of teams sent to Uyghur villages and they gather crucial information about the subsequent crackdown and campaign of mass internment. Chen Quanguo was brought then to Xinjiang, become party secretary of Xinjiang in August 2016. This was very strategic. He had about 6 to 7 months to prepare for the mass campaign of internment in re-education camps, which started in March or April 2017 in mass. It did happen before that in smaller scale. So what Chen did is he mass recruited police forces, constructed again thousands this time of new convenience police stations and checkpoints, installed large-scale surveillance systems. The establishment of this sort of security infrastructure would have been a first move to radically control the region in preparation for the campaign of mass internment. So if there was any unrest or anything, he would have had full grassroots control. So the key is Chen is the master of local control, rapid response, local control. Of course, the Chinese can always bring in the PLA, the army, the armed police, but Chen wants to have the police right in the local level and rapid responding and preemptive. So Chen pioneered preventative policing, by which the government anticipates anything, any kind of potential unrest or anything before it even happens. That's what he pioneered. Within the first 12 months of taking office in Xinjiang, Chen advertised as many police positions per capita as he had in 5 years in Tibet. In 1 year, as many as in 5 years. The internment campaign was almost certainly carefully premeditated. And it's quite possible that some of the key plans or decisions were made at the 2 sessions government meeting in March 2016 in Beijing. Because at that time you had Zhang Chunqian, then party secretary of Xinjiang, Chen Quanguo, and Xi Jinping all in the same place. That's likely when they planned what became the largest internment of an ethno-religious minority since the Holocaust. When Chen then assumed his post in August 2016, he immediately unfurled a rapid series of drastic and large-scale measures, for which he knew he had only about 6-7 months. One of the emphasis was on iron-fisted party discipline. So one of Chen's real hallmarks is controlling cadres, government officials, make them work hard, and make them implement a ruthless plan even against their own population. Many of these cadres are minority cadres, and he makes them act against their own ethnic people. This is one of the specialties of Chen. Again, of course, the village work teams were being deployed. Chen's focus was on preparing his ranks for the tough-minded military-style investigative and internment operations that were to follow very shortly. He prepared a relaunched village-based work team campaign in March 2017 in preparation for the mass internment, forming the groundwork for local government decisions. He also set the stage for a dramatic expansion of preschool education and preschool and any sort of education level boarding facilities with a military-style operation and a multi-billion Chinese yuan budget, dramatically expanding boarding facilities, knowing that hundreds of thousands of parents would be interned, in several instances both parents of children. Many of the construction of re-education camps, the construction bids were issued after Chen came to Xinjiang. All of these campaigns were executed with the same military-style drivenness and relentless precision, reflecting also Chen's military background, and that was kind of his hallmark. His hallmark is this incredible toughness. So he's an innovator, but what he then did in Xinjiang was like an upscaling, a drastic upscaling of the existing, and it's just incredible administrative operations. On a vast scale, Xinjiang is much bigger. Population is several times, like 7 to 8 times larger than in Tibet. Then, since 2019, Chen is moving into the long-term phase in Xinjiang, moving people from internment camps and also from wider society, from agricultural livelihoods into forced labor, different types of coercive labor settings, where the minorities work long hours and low-skilled manufacturing. This forced labor scheme is also being replicated in the Tibet Autonomous Region. In fact, almost exactly at the same time, the Tibet issue was, the Tibet upscaling of that program was issued in March 2019. And in Xinjiang, it really kind of gathered pace in the last part of 2018, but really also in the first half of 2019. Now for Beijing, Chen Chuanguo was clearly the ideal man for the job. He not only had the experience with cutting-edge police and surveillance mechanisms and technologies, he also had that uncompromising, intense drivenness and the stern military-like discipline required to upscale existing systems within extremely short time periods, extremely ambitious timescale here, we're talking, creating vast new realities before the world even knew what was going on. One of the key competencies of Chen, I already mentioned, is the ability to rule and manage these sort of less than disciplined minority cadres with an iron grip. And all that with near limitless authority over human beings and fast financial resources. So Chen was also very tough on minority cadres, and they also get re-educated in both Tibet and Xinjiang if they don't toe the line. Overall, Chen Chuanguo, and this is sort of my final paragraph here really, he's shown himself to be a pioneer and a mastermind of 21st century oppression. The system he has established is not simply one of simple oppression or simple elimination, as we would see for the Nazi camps in the Holocaust. In what could perhaps be termed a Holocaust 2.0, Chen has perfected the art of coercive social re-engineering, of an all-encompassing ethnocide, altering and transforming the core of an ethnic group's identity and distinctiveness without physically eliminating it, although physically containing, even possibly shrinking at least the Uyghur population in what we might refer to as demographic genocide, at least, and other genocide subject to definition. Even the term cultural genocide seems almost too weak to capture what Chen has done, especially in Xinjiang, but to an extent also in China's Tibetan regions. And any sort of punitive actions by the international community, even if symbolic, he might never leave China for safety reasons, but still, any punitive action would be highly warranted. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian. Next, we're going to hear from Rahima, who's going to talk about the effects that Chen's rule has had on the Uyghur people.
Thank you very much for organizing this, co-organizing this, and also for Adrian Zenz's in-depth analysis, information about Chen. I would like to talk from my own experience and my own perspective of how life has changed since Chen took office in August 2016. I left China in 2000, and I never went back, was unable to return because of my political and activism. But I was able to speak to my family. There were 1 year in 2009 after Urumqi massacre. We were all cut off during that period, and then everything became kind of the communication became normal. So I was able to speak to my sisters, my brothers, and with my friends. And so 2016, from summer, I learned that the Uyghurs were summoned to return or give away the passports. Later, we know that the all confiscating passport started, and in 2000 in August, around August, September, when I called my family members, they would just 2 minutes. They can't wait to put the phone down. I could feel from their behavior over the phone, the atmosphere seems very, very tense. And then from October, I couldn't get through to anyone. And in last time I contacted my brother was the 3rd of January. And he just told me, leave us in God's hands. And later I learned from most people, a majority of the Uyghurs that I know living abroad in exile, including people who never involved in any protests or anything, they said we cannot get hold of our families. Or some said that my mother told me don't call us again. So this is one of the most brutal policy that Chen implemented, that people cannot, or criminalizing people who has families living abroad. And this has affected every Uyghur living in exile. And it's from April 2016, I started hearing about this mass arrest. Mass arrest is taking place. And a lot of schools, or so-called party schools, turned into detention centers. And then later from the a satellite image, and we saw what they have built. And so all of this is because Chen is the one who turned from this severe persecution and to the genocidal policy, and the genocide is in the hands of Chen. So one of the witness account I have translated, this man, we called him Azad. He didn't want to reveal his name. His sister was in one of the camps, and he paid a lot of money to visit his sister. And this is what he said, what it is like, the camp, from his own experience. So he said, from the outside, on the name board, it was written beautifully, the Party School Re-Education Center. So I went inside lightheartedly because the name sounded very normal. But after having gone inside, I shivered because I became scared. As I walked inside, after passing through the gate, the security check carried out by the military, in the front to the left-hand side of the building, I saw over 1,000 people standing in straight lines, singing with empty bowls in their hands. They are all Uyghurs. I heard them singing in a broken Chinese accent. If there is no Communist Party, there is no new China. It is a song that they must sing in order to receive food. Then, in front of me, on the bare concrete ground, there were about 700 people sitting on the bare concrete ground in a weird upright position. They were approximately 1 meter apart from one another and staring at the Chinese flag. I was so shocked at the positions of those set on the ground. Later I learned that they were actually chained to rings set in the ground, and that is why they were set in such an orderly manner apart. They didn't look normal to me. They were like someone who had lost their memory after a car crash. They behaved as if they were not aware of what they were doing. So later, from other camp survivors interviewing, including Sairagul, who was an ex-camp teacher, and many other brave witnesses, and gave their testimonies about the torture, rape, food deprivation, sleep deprivation, and basically horror. And outside the camp, people were not free. And Adrian has already explained what has been happening to just ordinary people, everyday life. And we interviewed for this film, a documentary which won now 7 big awards, Undercover China's Digital Gulag, which I worked as consultant and translator. And one of the intellectual that we interviewed, and this is what he said: everyone was fearful, whether those already taken inside or those who are waiting to be taken in. Our relatives, under the influence of the state terror, dare not even greet one another openly without fear. Even those type of things have completely disappeared. It is unbearable to describe the life there. A knock on the door from anyone would bring extreme anxiety and fright. So this has been continuing since 2016 up until now. We believe up to 3 million, maybe even more, being detained. Still not known. Majority people, we don't know what happened to them, and among them are intellectuals, cultural figures, writers, poets, singers, and there have been a lot of people that I know that lost relatives, soon after being released from camps, died. One example I never forget, when I went to Turkey for another documentary with a Sky News reporter, and we visited this young man who wanted to tell a story about his conversation, a video conversation with his relative who was released for 24 hours visit. And he showed us the video call, and it's just unbearable. This relative who used to be a camp teacher was graduated, law school graduated, and later she was also imprisoned for 5 years. And she said, I called you just to say, I know that I will be punished for this, but I think this is the only opportunity for me to say goodbye to you. I don't think I will survive. And soon after we finished the interview, his mother walked in, and she just came straight to me and hugged and started sobbing. And then she said, my elder brother was released from camp a week ago. I found that yesterday we learned the news that he died. And I cannot share this. I cannot even cry openly because my mother, 82 years old mother, she cannot handle this news. That's why I have to, I have to hide myself in kitchen, in toilet. So they don't want to show, don't want her to find out. So this is the kind of situation that the Uyghurs are suffering. And I also know there are family in this country as well, at least one family that I know, the brother also died in the camp. So situation is absolutely horrific. Uyghurs in the East Turkestan are suffering, and we are suffering. I am suffering, and we really need the world must remember this monster. Of course, there are many other officials, including, of course, Xi Jinping, but this man, I believe that, should be remembered for his deeds and the genocide that he has committed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rahima. It's always an honor and a sad privilege to hear you speak with your distinctive moral clarity and precision about these horrendous acts. I'm going to comment a little bit about Tibet. Unfortunately, our Tibetan speaker, Wangden, couldn't make it today. We've had some technical difficulties. He's the research manager at Tibet Watch, which is an organisation that gets information out of Tibet. I cannot compare with his expertise or experience, but I will just briefly outline Chen's legacy and why it has made his work so hard, as well as being so repressive for Tibetans in Tibet. One of the key things he would have explained is that now it's far harder to get information from Tibet. When we get cases of political prisoners from the part of Tibet ruled as the TAR, they're often months after the event has happened, just because they take so long to reach the outside world. Wangden has also said that in Tibet today there's no space to breathe. When he said that, he's referring to the fact that there are police cameras and checkpoints all over Tibet. After uprising in 2008 that took Beijing and the world by surprise, the party clearly vowed that they will have stability at all costs in Tibet and that such protests must never take place again. And that's why you see these widespread and repressive surveillance and security measures. We should also mention that this is not just a process of locking down Tibet and preventing protests. It's also one of breaking the image with their class, like the eradication of their cultural, religious and linguistic heritage, which are key aspects of their identity and a key aspect of Tibetan nationalism. As authenticates these things, it's a process that's been dubbed breaking lineage, breaking roots, breaking connections and breaking origins. Key of this were campaigns to promote ethnic unity between Tibetans and Han Chinese through things like promoting marriage, and hundreds of thousands of Han Chinese settlers were transferred into Lhasa, where they are economically and socially privileged in a way that Tibetans are not. Millions of pounds have also been invested in initiatives to force Tibetan monasteries to be loyal to the CCP and to China for a mix of coercion and state propaganda. There's barely an aspect of Tibetan society today that does not have the CCP's fingerprints all over it. And the fact that it is now so hard to get information out of Tibet, and we know so little about it, is also one of the most compelling reasons why the cause is so pressing. In the words of Sophie Richardson, who we once interviewed, she's a researcher at Human Rights Watch, getting information out of Tibet today is as difficult as getting information out of North Korea. With that, first of all, I'd like to thank Adrian and Rahima for those opening statements. You've heard about a range of crimes, demand investigation and demand a response, and two peoples that demand both our solidarity and our support. To this end, we're launching our campaign today. It's called Ban Chen, which you can see at ban-chen.org. The campaign is being driven by the Tibetan community in the UK, the World Uyghur Congress, and my organisation, Free Tibet. It calls for the Secretary of State in the UK to use his powers to place travel sanctions on Chen. Over the summer, the UK introduced a new regime of sanctions applied to individuals responsible for acts such as torture or forced labour. 49 people are currently on this list, but Chen is currently conspicuous by his absence. If we want to change this, we need to get in touch with the government and explain why this man needs to be known and why he needs to be held to account. To do this, you can start by going to the petition, which is on the website, ban-chen.org. And with that, let's turn to a few questions that we've been sent, and a reminder that if you do have any questions, you can put them in the comments on the chat on Facebook, and we'll answer as many as we can. But I thought I'd start with one, which is, perhaps you can speak to this, Adrian. It's, to what extent can we say that Chen is personally responsible for these measures? Would things have been different if just another CCP official had been put in charge, or did he bring something unique to Tibet and now to the Uyghur region?
That is, of course, a very interesting question. It is possible that Beijing or Xi Jinping would have tried to find any suitable person to do this, given also Xi Jinping's words, in 2014 to require, be as tough as them, show no mercy, and require painful intervention. At the same time, of course, Chen Quanguo had shown unique qualities, a unique ruthlessness, and it is unclear if things could have proceeded the same way if it hadn't been for him. I therefore think that his personality and his unique character or person played a significant role in this. But of course, it's entirely possible that it would have happened without him. Maybe not quite in the same way, though. He could have also made his own suggestions, in how to do it. Of course, his predecessor, Zhang Chunquan, party secretary of Xinjiang, prepared the way in a number of ways. Kind of almost handed Chen Quanguo a well-prepared package. But he was not picked to actually implement this, the most draconian parts. So clearly, Chen had proven himself as one of the most capable of being entrusted with this job.
And a follow-up to that, I suppose, is, would it be fair to say that his acts in Tibet were almost rewarded both by him being made party secretary of the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, but also being elevated to the Politburo?
Well, certainly, yes. The elevation to the Politburo, while, I mean, in some ways it comes with the position of being party secretary of Xinjiang, but at the same time it is a reward, clearly, of success, yeah.
I don't know if you have anything to add, Rahima. Otherwise, I have a question that I think you'd be very well placed to answer, which is the repression against the Uyghur people has been happening for many years. Why are we only learning more about it in these past couple of years?
Well, that's a great question, actually. Yes, many massacres happened even before the CCP occupied in 1949. But the world basically, I think, didn't really know. So most of the massacres, including the latest, like Baden and Baden massacre. But I know 2009, the Urumqi massacre, or they called it unrest, that was very become publicly. I mean, a lot of media reported it, but based on the Chinese CCP propaganda, mostly, I would say. But I think the reason why the world started, this is like Adrian earlier said, this is the largest incarceration of one group of people since the Holocaust. And from 2017 April, I have tried many reporters, sending them news reports from Radio Free Asia, and also some of the documents that I have translated, hoping them to report about it, but they were just very quiet. Didn't really even get back to me or reply to my emails. But only, I think it was in August 2018 when this first time when the UN publicly acknowledged and criticized China that holding up to 1 million Uyghurs and other ethnic minorities. Then suddenly, everywhere the press just becomes so active. I received many phone calls and Newsnight, John Sweeney's Newsnight program. I helped with the translation work, and also I appeared on that program. So that is a kicking point, I would say. It was in 2018 from August, and soon after, BBC did the documentary and shown the John Sudwa's program, and many other reporters went to East Turkestan and managed to do some recordings or interviews. So yeah, when compared to the scale of what is happening, I still feel is not enough. The media is not really reporting, for people to learn what is happening.
Thank you, Rahima. I don't know if you had anything to add, Adrian. Otherwise, I will go to the next question, which is about the campaign. And it is quite simply, how does banning Chen in the UK help Tibetans, and presumably Uyghur people too? I don't mind making a start on this, since I work for a campaign organisation, but I'd be really happy for both of you to pitch in as well. The obvious ones that occur to me. First of all, it's that classic one, raising awareness. It sounds like a cliche, but it's really important here. We do need to put faces to these abuses, and I think if you have a massive bureaucracy like the CCP is running, it can sometimes be lost on people that there are people in this bureaucracy making decisions and carrying out acts, and there should be accountability for that. And I think identifying someone who has caused misery in an absolutely astonishing amount of territory, if you were to see on the map the amount of territory that specifically the Tibet Autonomous Region and East Turkestan combined is, it's an enormous area, bigger than most countries. So I think it's quite right that the person who sort of locked both of these places down and carried out such widespread abuses is known. I think secondly, it's a precedent for other countries to follow. It's important to note that the US has already placed sanctions on Chen. They did so over the summer. So the UK would actually be following their lead. But it's our hope then that it doesn't stop here. This is the first step that other countries find the moral courage to also do this. I think it would send a very clear international signal that abuses anywhere near this scale are not tolerable and have to be punished, even if it is with something as simple and apparently symbolic as a travel ban. And I think it would also, specifically for the UK, signal a change in the UK stance from this golden era that they had been running before under previous governments, which clearly hasn't worked because human rights under CCP rule have not improved. If we look at somewhere like Hong Kong, it's very much the opposite. There's a sign that things can get worse unless there's pushback early on, and it's firm and decisive. So I think for those three reasons, it's important that we're pushing this campaign, and that this awareness and accountability will not only help Tibetans and Uyghurs to some extent, but also help peoples who might be under threat from this treatment in the future. And I don't know if anyone can say that better than I did. You're very welcome to join in.
Well, I would very much agree with that. It's crucial for us to do the right thing, because there's a symbolic power in doing the right thing. It sends a signal of some kind. And yes, some people think, well, that's just emboldening or hardening Beijing's stance. But I mean, how much harder can Beijing's stance get on it actually pushing back against a crime against humanity in some way is absolutely necessary. And banning Chen or sanctioning Chen is one step up from just saying something. It is an action, and it does show also to Beijing that there's a consequence, and countries will adopt consequences. And the stronger Beijing's pushback is, or the more angry the CCP responds, I think the more of a morally correct choice and impact the Western or the free world has made. And I sure hope the free world is not just the Western world. Therefore, I think these kinds of measures are just highly, I think they're easy to underestimate. And I would not measure them by the immediate impact or consequence. They're not going to make anything better immediately in Xinjiang or Tibet. I think it's a long-term thing. We failed in 2008. We should have shown much earlier that there's a resolve to not let massive human rights violations go without consequence of any kind. So there was a really good opinion piece, I think possibly written by a Tibetan, on how China's failure, how the Western failure to act and punish, put a consequence on what China did in 2008 after the Lhasa riots, emboldened them to commit even worse atrocities now in Tibet and especially Xinjiang. And I think that's very true.
Yeah, I agree 100% with both of you. And I do feel that, as I said earlier, people need to know these faces who are behind, who are these people are really incarcerating, torturing, and inflicting so much pain and suffering to innocent people, children, women. And these people's face should be remembered. And I think with this campaign and the Chen, there is an opportunity for people to really join the campaign and raise awareness with their communities. And of course, the sanction is necessary. It's not actually enough. That's not enough, nowhere near enough punishment to this monster. But at least, sending this message that whenever you do evil, there is consequences. And I can go back even further from Adrian Zenz. Just imagine after 1989, the student massacre, if the world acted very differently. And maybe things could have been different. I often think about that. I think the situation, in fact, after the Cultural Revolution, then, brief kind of breathing space that we had in 80s, and then 1989, the massacre, student massacre in Beijing. And that actually the turning point, the human rights situation, and the whole, the basic freedom that we had, relatively basic freedom that the whole in China and in other parts, that actually started eroded from that time. So just imagine again in 1997 when the Uyghur massacre happened. Amnesty has documented there were mass execution happened, and then 2009. There's so much. The world did have the opportunity to act, but failed. But still now is failing us, and it's up to us. People have to put pressure on our own governments and to tell the story and show the face of these people and demand them to be punished.
Thanks both. The next question, it's a bit of a similar theme to one we dealt with earlier, but considering the scale of the atrocities, why aren't we hearing more about this in mainstream media? And then they add, do you feel it should be spoken about more? Which I suspect is the easy part of the question. I wonder if either of you have anything to say about that.
Yes. So in November last year, the China cables were published, and the main German national news channel was part of the investigation by the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists. And it was a really big deal. It was a classified leaked government document. It really showed that these vocational training centers are run like prisons, high security prisons. And it was a big, high profile investigation, almost like on the scale of the Panama Papers, etc., and other stuff. So it was all over the German news. It was on the front lines of major news channels for about 24 hours. And then you can see how the headlines drop down and it fades out. And that's what it took. That's what it took to get the attention to this incredible human rights disaster. It took a fascinating leaked document. It took an international investigation, and it took the direct participation of the major German news channel, state TV channel, and a major German newspaper as well, both of them. And when I, for example, published on demographic genocide and birth prevention, it barely hit the German headlines because the Germans were not really part of that investigation. And it was other things like Hong Kong. So this is like a lesson about the news cycle and what matters in the news. So the biggest headline is what people most care about is the local news. Oh, there's a flooding in my area, and maybe, and if 2 people died in my neighborhood, you know. So that's how it works, right? And what interests me, and oh, the latest celebrity, and it's when I saw the Uyghur issue fading out of the headlines 28 hours after the China cables, you have this sinking feeling. What is it going to take to have it back in there again? And why is this not, such a human rights atrocity? Why is this a specialized topic? It's far away. We have no natural connections to Uyghurs. Maybe to Tibetans a little bit more, but even there, we're kind of used to it, But nobody has even heard of the Uyghurs, and how do you even pronounce them in a place where they live? And so it's this cognitive distance. It's not like a moral huge disaster. It's not like the latest match of local of soccer club X against soccer club Y is going to be more important than the torture of millions of Uyghurs. And there's something profoundly wrong with that, profoundly. But of course, news organizations cater to the interest of the audience. So really, the fault is with us, really. And our politicians too, right? Because those who have been elected to office have a unique ability to speak up. And have they done so? No, they have not. And even a single remark on a single visit does not count as speaking up. That's like a blip. No, our governments have also failed. Have they clearly denounced this repeatedly? Are they holding events? Is our governments, like in 2018, I was asked by the German, I was part of the German parliamentary hearing. And I said, well, it's the German government needs to raise this, and you could say this the same about any government, including British, right? Any of these examples apply to British, including the media. Should hold events also about forced labor. They have the ability, they can set this on they can set our national and social agenda. This shouldn't be up to some human rights niche, but it is. It's a systemic failure. And it's being exposed.
Absolutely agree.
Thanks both. The next question is, I think we'll take 2 more. This one is there anything else the UK government can do apart from banning Chen to help Tibetans and Uyghurs?
Okay, we have, for example, from the World Uyghur Congress, we have the pledge in MP pledge. So the first thing is independent United Nations and United Nations mechanism to investigate and monitor and report a crime against humanity and a genocide committed. So this is the number 1 thing we feel that is necessary, but it's not happening. But obviously, we believe only the governments all come together to push this. And the second is again how to hold China accountable through Magnitsky style sanctions, and this is what we are demanding now again against Chen. And also take action against companies and institutions facilitating the persecution of the Uyghur and other minorities, and require companies importing products or components from China to investigate their supply chains. So this is one of the quite important thing that governments can do, practically can do this, and also help any Uyghurs in exile, especially who are here in the UK, to grant them asylum and protect them. So there are many things government can do. Also, how to support the exile community as well. For example, supporting the PR campaign on what is happening.
Thanks, Rahima. Time for one more question, I think. This one is slightly personal, but we'll see how it goes. So, Rahima, you're obviously a very powerful, important voice for the Uyghur people, one of several sort of brilliant advocates. But perhaps you feel perhaps that you're almost forced to do this work. Like, this is the cause that you've been given. You were not in this position where you had to advocate for the Uyghur people. What would you be doing? What would most Uyghur people be doing if they didn't have to undertake this struggle?
It's a very good question. Honestly, human rights advocacy work was always like part of my work, whether when I was doing translation work or just joining the Tibetan and the Chinese Democrats. We had this NGOs, but it wasn't like a full-time. I mean, now I'm almost a full-time position, and day and night doing this. This is the only way that I can find a peace. I can find some kind of comfort, feel that I'm being useful, at least, and hoping that, everything that I do, of course, not just myself. I have many other Uyghurs are doing all over the world, working very, very hard. And also we have now many other human rights activists, campaigners are helping. But if I didn't have to do what I am doing, honestly, I might have produced several CDs. We'll be touring the world, maybe singing, maybe translating books, literature, other fictions. For example, there was a book I done 2/3 of it after I published the first book, The Land Drenched in Tears, and I couldn't just get around to it because of the volume of the work that I have to do. And I'm sure, my other colleagues, other friends who are also doing this full time, everyone has hobby and other things, that it can occupy their time and their mind. But at the moment, when your mind is completely occupied by this kind of sadness and not, even though for a lot of people it's far away, but for me it's not far. As I explained to you, not only just my own situation, but because of all the other Uyghurs living in exile that suffering from this. It's extremely difficult. I cannot imagine people, carry on everyday life normally without doing anything. And for me, a lot of people also asked me, how you carrying on and, day in, day out. I feel still very fortunate. The reason I feel fortunate is I feel that, how lucky I am, I left my country in 2000. Imagine if I were there, I wouldn't been able to do anything what I'm doing now. So at least this freedom that I have and the safety, I feel safe, at least relatively safe here. And so I'm doing it happily, not necessarily like I'm pushed or forced, but I'm doing it happily because I feel that, I have this freedom, and I am fortunate to be able to do what I am doing. And also, the scholars like Adrian Zenz inspires me as well, because there are so many good people out there. Although sometimes you feel like blood boil, make you angry. Think why this is completely muted. But then when you look at like Adrian, Darren, Byler, and many other scholars and activists, they are giving up their own free times and trying to help. And that gives me comfort as well.
Thank you, Rahima. And thank you to both of you, Adrian Zenz and Rahima Mahmut, for being on our panel today, answering questions and speaking about why we do need this campaign to take place to account for the widespread massive abuses that have been carried out against the Tibetan and the Uyghur people. To those watching, I wish you a lovely day. I hope you're keeping safe. And please do remember to check out the website and to take the action. You can find it at banchen.org. That's ban-chen.org. And with that, I think we can sign off and say goodbye. Thanks once again.
Thank you.
Thank you. And happy birthday.